Step into the jungle of flavor and focus with Mystic Monkey, the deluxe mushroom coffee from Monkey Werx. We're not talking about your average cup of joe. This is dark roast done right. Bold, smooth, with deep notes of chocolate and caramel. But here's the twist. Organic lion's mane and chaga mushrooms, ancient ingredients used for centuries to support mental clarity, immune health, and overall vitality. No crash, no jitters, just grounded energy and crystal clear focus. Mystic Monkey is for the ones chasing more than just caffeine. It's for the seekers, the thinkers, the doers. This isn't just coffee. It's an experience. It's Mystic Monkey. Available now at monkeywerx.com. Works for the soul.
All right. Hey, welcome, folks. It's going to be your sit rep. It's 4/9/2026, coming to you live here from Monkey Lounge in the great state of Texas. So today we're going to be talking about the ceasefire. And I'm telling you, just like I said before when we were in the middle of negotiations, it is not going to stick. It will produce zero fruit, and we are absolutely wasting time. So let's talk a little bit about that. And I'm going to show you some news. We're going to talk about the skies. I'm going to show you what's currently up, all of the traction that's going across, or the tracks, sorry, going across the drink. Just would indicate that this ceasefire is a farce. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to take us over here. I want to talk about a few things first and foremost. And you may remember this moment. Yeah, this was when GW came out onto one of the aircraft carriers and said, "Mission accomplished." Right? Yeah, not so fast. We went to war for years after that, and we lost a lot of people. So look, if you're gonna step into the arena, then finish the fight. You don't dabble in conflict and then spike the football and pretend the job is done while your adversary is still intact. Look, I'll own something right out of the gate. And last sit rep, I waffled. Part of me thought the deadline would hold, and then part of me questioned it. You could hear the hesitation. But here's where we are now. Nothing has changed on their side. Same regime, same playbook, same objective. The only thing that has shifted was the narrative. Right now, we're being told everything's good. That's not strength. That, quite frankly, is delusion. And the battlefield always corrects delusion. Here's the part that nobody's really saying out loud. One side in this has been remarkably consistent, and it ain't us. So I'm going to show you the receipts. I'm going to go through the things that have been said by Trump and what has been said by the regime that has supposedly been taken out, which they haven't. Yeah, it's the old saying, if you remember from the movie Sum of All Fears, right? Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Nothing has changed at all on any level. So let's do this. I'm going to take us over first and foremost, and we're going to come back to this because we don't have just a single moment on an aircraft carrier claiming victory. We have a multitude of them, and they're wrong all the way around. So let's do this. I'm going to take us over here. I'm going to show you the skies real fast, just so you can see what's up and over our heads. And just note that there is a lot of ISR activity over the United States. As always, the high flyers, intel balloons, we've got some showing offline here. Our Ohana family out here in Hawaii is also got some traction covering up on them. And that one's been there for at least a month. I mean, it was there during all of the flooding going on. So there's that. And then you can see the low altitude stuff as well. But this is really just the pertinent things that are out and about. Now, this flight, this is going to be one of your gray birds. And that is actually flying out. Looks like it's on the trajectory to come into Guantanamo Bay. I haven't really been covering the bay, or AKA the spa, that much lately. Maybe we'll start looking at it again. But nonetheless, that's where we are over the U.S. 241, and I've taken out all of the trainers. So let's get into some of the deets around this. I'm going to show you the things that I thought were interesting, and I'm going to show you why I don't think this peace thing is going to pay. It's not going to produce any fruit whatsoever. So first and foremost, let me show you the reach flights over the last 4 days. And you're going to note that there is still the consolidation into the ports area around Charleston, Savannah. You can see the flights coming from the military bases into those locations. So more than likely, they're moving artillery, air defense, etc. Most of that'll go on boats and be floated across the drink. And then look at all of Norfolk, all the way up the East Coast. Look at the amount of traces going across. 400 and almost 50 flight traces in the last 4 days. So we're averaging over 100. So there is a surge there, a continued surge. You see the volume into Ramstein, Germany, and then you see them disappear out over the Middle East. So there's that aspect. Now let's look at the camber flights. And you'll notice that the camber flights also are all rolling into the Middle East. That's troops more than likely. When I say camber, I'm talking about U.S. Transportation Command. So just, it's a data point for you. But you'll notice too, there's some that go into Libya, which I thought was a little bit weird. Into Europe, that's just processing. They come in and then they end up all going into the Middle East. But you can see the flights going over the last 4 days. So it's a continued surge. And then if you get over the United States, you'll note that they are coming out of the military locations, all the base locations. Okay, now take a look at the air refuelers. Last 4 days. You will note still the big wad of them over Israel. Then they go dark. You'll see the stuff that goes down towards Portugal coming into the Med. And you'll notice the volume going into the UK and then down into Europe. And then note the flights going across the air, or as we call sky bridge or air bridge. Right now, note too, everything that goes down to, well, you got it Hawaii, but the Texas border continued. And then note the flights that are over the Gulf of America, which, if you know, most of our oil comes out of that region. So we would certainly have fighters up over that side to protect that. Because that's a lot of revenue for the companies here in the United States. Not the country, but for companies. It's capitalism, right? Rock and roll. Okay, now take a look at the intel, all right? Intel, surveillance, and reconnaissance. The things that come out of my mouth sometimes, folks, I don't know. There is certainly a disconnect between the old brain and the mouth when it opens. It just flows out. All right. So this is your intel flights. A lot of this is LaSalle Aviation, but you'll note that it's down over the Pacific. That's because there's a lot of ocean traffic. They're probably monitoring that area very closely. You'll notice a lot of stuff around, it looks to be Georgia, some man in the middle over Georgia, some things going down to Pensacola. But notice the fanning out over the left coast. Okay, and then the usual over Europe and nothing to see over the Middle East. So now we go on to drones. Now pay attention to this one because this was interesting. You'll notice there is a broken trace right here out over the Persian Gulf. That is a Q4 drone that they lost contact with. And we'll talk about that here in just a minute in the news when I get over to that side of it. And then you'll notice we're operating out of Malta. Again, high altitude, Q4 drones. You'll see some things coming out of Europe, headed down towards the Med, and then they go dark. That is going to be a Predator drone up at the Canadian border. We've been operating those up there near Fort Drum for quite some time now. That's a Q9 drone on the Canadian border. And then you'll note there's some flights that happen off the left coast, out over the water. And this one I find very interesting because it is not a high altitude, it's low altitude drone activity over the state of Louisiana, and it's a lot of it. Okay, so let me take you, I'm just going to show you the two articles before we get too far in. First and foremost, this is the Q4 drone that disappeared over the Persian Gulf. More than likely, it was either shot down or jammed up where they couldn't control. I don't know what happened to it. They haven't really reported on it. But you can just add that to all the other stuff that we've lost, the other 16 MQ-9 Reapers that have been shot down that we really don't talk about too much. And then this is the Michigan Air National Guard, the A-10s departing. They're leaving Lakenheath into the Middle East. Yeah, I know. Every time you see it in your mind, you go, burp. That's what I do. It is a glorious sound, but this is a really cool aircraft. It is a tank killer, and it is headed down to the Middle East. Again, we're bolstering what is there. We're not letting up on any level. Okay, back over here. We're going to talk a little bit about, we talked drones. Now, let me show you the sub hunters because this is interesting, and pay attention to this because you'll notice very active down off of Southern California and the left coast, and very active over the Gulf of America. Two sets, we got some broken traces. So they are absolutely watching. They have fighters out over the Gulf of America. We see in just a minute, you'll see other assets. We've seen R-135s down there. We've seen the nuke sniffers down over the Gulf of America. I have no idea what this thing is doing down in South America, but that's going to be your sub hunters. You'll see a little bit of activity. We'll talk to some of the other stuff going on when it comes to the UK, and you'll notice too, very active right up to the coastline of Israel. Okay, now R-135s, very fanned out, 4 days worth of flights. You'll notice down to the southern border, kind of off the Pacific Northwest. You see it up over its usual locations around the Dakotas. And then you'll see it just kind of sweep up the eastern seaboard. Again, this is signal intelligence. R-135 signal intel. Now, we go over to Europe, and it looks like we are really kind of keeping an eye on this little point near the Baltic Sea, headed towards where Russia would probably hang out over there near Kaliningrad, etc. And then you'll see some broken traces off the Med. Now, take a look at this one because we got some movement from the nuke sniffer as well. Now, the interesting piece is, again, these are very specific aircraft for a very specific mission. They're looking for nuclear material that shouldn't be there. You'll notice that it goes down to the southern border in Texas, but then you'll notice too that it does go across the drink. Doesn't stop in the UK. Guess where it heads? Yeah, right down here to Crete. So we have just put the nuke sniffer back into the arena. So that is a very big data point for you. Now, the other one too I want to point out is I've been talking about the Gulf of America, talking about all the activity that's been going on down there. You'll notice an AWACS is also over the Gulf of America. Again, nuke sniffer, AWACS, fighters, sub hunters all over the Gulf of America. That tells you they're very concerned about somebody taking something out down in that location. And then the same spot up there near that Baltic Sea side of the house. And I'll explain all that in a minute because you'll see the UK was very busy. You may remember we were talking about some of the NATO activity around the UK, and I was like, man, what are they doing off this side of the UK? It was very active, but we had no idea why. So if you look at NATO, and this is one of the things I'm going to point out, because as I go in and I start to show you the waffling that's happened with the statements that Trump has made, then you will see NATO is not supporting us on any level. On any level. This is why we need to back out of NATO. They showed their true colors. You know, there's the Article 5, which basically says if you come against one of us, you come against all of us. And here we are. We're in we're in combat with Iran. Now that's Turkey. They're going to be active over Turkey. But here we are. We were at war with Iran, and not a single one of them have shown up. In fact, they've been like, hey, good luck. Hey, can you just free up our oil because you're killing our economy? That's all they've had to say about it. In fact, they've tucked tail and run the opposite direction. So it just seems to be a bunch of soy boys, quite frankly. And I don't know why we continue to put 90% or fund 90% of NATO with our tax dollars. I think we ought to get the heck out of that. Tell them to pack sand, kick rocks, however you want to say it. I know some of you may say it a little stronger than that, but not me. All right. So, okay. Now let's get over here. I want to go back to this moment. The whole mission accomplished thing. You remember GW came out. This is also the same guy that showed up late for the war. But GW comes out and does this mission accomplished thing. Like we just, kick the daylights out of Iraq and everything that was over there. And then, of course, we spent another 8 years over there. The thing is, you never plant your flag early, especially if you're not complete with the task. As I mentioned early on, this is not one of those where you dabble, because when you start to waffle, you look weak. We did it, and I said this early on when Trump started talking about the Gaza peace plan, and he started talking about Hamas, and he gave Hamas a 6 p.m. deadline, and that deadline came and went. That told everybody everything, right? And I hear people going, "Oh, dude, it's 5G chess, or it's art of the deal." No, it's not. It absolutely, if that's art of the deal, it's a dumb playbook, quite frankly, because it's not getting the mission accomplished. You don't dabble. You go in, you finish the job, and you come out when it's complete. We're already into this. This is not the time to cease fire and think that these guys are going to come to the table with anything other than what they've already done, which is zero. It's not going to produce fruit. It's a waste in our time while the clock is ticking, and it's buying them time. Now, here is I'm going to go through starting March 3rd. Remember, the war kicked off on the 28th. And this is how many times Trump has come out and talked about when we've already won the war. Far from it. We haven't even really gotten started. So, March 3rd, he comes out and says, we won the war. March 7th, we defeated Iran. March 9th, we must attack Iran. So he just waffled completely. We went from we've already won it to now we got to attack them. Okay. The war is ending almost completely. You even waffled in one sentence. Very beautifully. In true Trump form. Okay. Okay. Now, March 11th, right? You never like to say too early you won, but we won, right? In the first hour, it was over. Again, not even remotely close to the case. March 12th, the next day, doubles down, well, maybe triples down. We did win, but we haven't won completely yet. March 13th, goes back on it again. We won the war, right? You guys seeing the pattern here? It's almost embarrassing, quite frankly. Okay, so then on the 14th, he's telling NATO, yeah, please help us. You got to get engaged. Of course, NATO's nowhere to be found. Those guys are off worrying about Russia and trying to figure out how they're going to use the money that we give them and how they can prevent us from taking that money away. That's all they care about. Like I said, bunch of soy boys, right? If you don't help us, I will certainly remember it. Yeah, he's remembering it now. Okay. March 16th, actually, we don't need any help at all. Again, waffling. Like, you need to help us. If you don't help us, we're going to remember it. And now we don't really need your help. Okay. I was just testing to see who's listening to me. Well, I'm listening. That's for sure. Okay. If NATO doesn't help, they will suffer something very bad. And that's us backing out. I hope he stands to it. Probably won't. Okay. I don't need congressional approval to withdraw from NATO. And then he says, we neither need nor want NATO's help. Again, all over the board. Honestly, if I was on the other side of the table negotiating with somebody like this, I would quite frankly think they were bipolar. And I know that sounds harsh, folks. I voted for him 3 times. But I'm just to the point where I just go, none of this makes sense. Stop waffling. You're making us look weak. Look, throat punch them and hold them down until they're done. Finish it. Just stop. Please stop the insanity. Okay. March 18th, our allies must cooperate in reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Okay. Then what did they do? They all get together, 36 countries, and they don't, what did they produce? I haven't heard anything come out of it yet. Okay. Now, U.S. allies need to get a grip, step up, and help open the Strait. NATO are cowards. I would agree with that completely. Okay. All right. Now, what's the next one? Let's get into this. This is amazing. All right. The 21st. So these are just day after day after day, back and forth, right? The Strait of Hormuz must be protected by the countries that use it. We don't use it. We don't need to open it. Remember, he said that, okay? March 22nd. This is the last time I will give Iran 48 hours, open the Strait. Iran is dead. Okay, that was on the 22nd. Again, we don't use it. We don't need to open it. The very next day, this is the last time you got 48 hours to open it. Now, we had very good and productive talks with Iran. And Iran during that time is like this. Like, who's he talking to? Anybody know? All right. We're making progress. The 24th, back to back. So there was some talks going on somewhere. They gave us a present. Now, this one I find is complete. I think this is rubbish all the way through. A very big present worth a tremendous amount of money. I'm not going to tell you what it is. Well, he did tell. He said it was 10 oil tankers worth of oil that they delivered to us as a gift. Absolutely nothing tracked out of there. Nothing showed up. This was, I don't even know how somebody else didn't call him on that and ask the questions, show the receipts. Where is this? What is it you're talking about? Because we've seen no proof of that. And Iran never said anything about it. Nobody else said anything about it, just him. Okay. We don't have to be there for NATO. I agree. I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comments. Should we get out of NATO? I would venture to guess that unless you're in Europe, most of you are going to go, yes, 100%. I want my money back. Okay. The 27th, I mentioned that one. We don't have to be in NATO. The 29th of March, claimed talks were progressing. March 30th, open the Strait immediately or face devastating consequences. Let's go to the next page. March 31st, claimed a deal was very close and Iran would do the right thing. So it was pretty hopeful. Remember, in the middle of all of this, every time he changes directions, the oil prices are going up and down, up and down. They are fluctuating. The stock market's going crazy. Somebody's making a lot of money off every time he says something, okay? And it's not you and me. All right, April 1st, April Fool's Day. Here we go. That's where he came out and did his speech at the White House, basically saying 2 to 3 more weeks and we'll be done. All the while, the ground troops were all amassing, headed over to the Middle East. We will see what happens very soon, is what he said on April 1st. And then he repeated on the 2nd that a deal was likely while warning of continued strikes if not. And then April 3rd, he said something big is going to happen. April 4th, Iran must comply immediately or face further consequences. And then on the 5th, he just flew off the hinges and basically dropped the F-bomb, right? Opened the Strait, the effing Strait, okay? You crazy bastards, right? Or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. And then he threw out there, this is what triggered Tucker Carlson, right? Praise be to Allah, right? So basically mocking them, which, you know what? This is what I voted for, quite frankly. I voted for somebody that's going to have the stones to say what they mean and mean what they say, get the job done, get in, kill the enemy, and get out, and not dabble. Because dabbling, that, you know what, that costs people lives, or that costs lives, okay? Especially when it comes to our military. You don't need somebody when you got the warfighter in the field taking shots or getting hit by drones and missiles because the enemy's not honoring any of it while somebody is indecisive. Okay. Now take a look at what Iran did. All right. I'm just going to go through these because I thought they were interesting and I will read them through. I'm just going to pull up all of them at one time here so you can see the various statements that Iran made, because this is kind of, it flies in the face of all the stuff that has been going on with Trump, the things that he's saying, because they're not buying any of it and they're not waffling. They have made the same statement from day one of negotiations and they have not wavered. So the first one, This is coming from the IRGC and the Revolutionary Guard. We are the ones who determined the end of the war. That was reported by Reuters. And this was an IRGC spokesperson on March 9th and 10th, alongside the warning that Iran would not allow 1 liter of oil to leave the region if the U.S. and Israel or Israeli attacks continued. Now, mind you, the Strait was closed then, and it is still closed as we speak today. It has not reopened, even through the ceasefire talk. And we'll get into all of that. Second one, Iran rejected Trump's ceasefire push. Reuters reported on April 6th, which is 3 days ago, folks, that Iran formally rejected a ceasefire in its response to the U.S. proposal and stressed the need for a permanent end to the war instead, not a temporary ceasefire. That is not a colorful quote, but a direct official rejecting Trump's immediate ceasefire framework. That also was reported on Reuters. Iranian Supreme National Security Council, which is still fully intact. Okay. Reuters reported that Iran's SNSC portrayed the ceasefire as a victory over the U.S. and said Trump has accepted Iran's conditions for ending hostilities. That is Tehran flatly rejecting the idea that was capitulated, that it was basically losing. Okay. Then you got this other guy, and I'm not Mohammed something another. He's the parliamentary speaker. He said, the very workable basis on which to negotiate has been openly and clearly violated. He made that statement, I think, yesterday. Basically, he added that under those circumstances, a bilateral ceasefire negotiation is unreasonable, and that this is about as direct as it gets on not accepting the ceasefire as the White House was describing it. So basically, they said, we're not going to sign up for any of the terms that Trump and everybody said we were. Then you had the president, which, by the way, same guy that was in before the war started, April 9th. He said Israeli strikes on Lebanon violated the ceasefire and would make negotiations meaningless. That's also from Reuters. Okay, he stated Iran would not abandon the Lebanese people, that this is a direct rejection of any ceasefire interpretation that excludes Lebanon. And then on the Trump's nuclear demands, the Washington Post reported the Iranian officials were still insisting they would not budge on their right to enrich uranium. You're dead in the water before it starts. You're back, in fact, right to where you were pre-negotiation before all of this started. And we went how many? 4 or 5 times, produced zero fruit, and then we ended up bombing them. So we're going to be right back to this again. This is just 2 weeks of them getting their act together and getting ready for the next round. Because, oh, by the way, they punch out those drones very quickly, if you haven't noticed. Right? So this, again, is a direct contradiction to Trump's no enrichment red line. So overall, the Iranian line has been pretty consistent. Yeah, in fact, hasn't changed all the way back to the negotiations. One, they say, look, we're not surrendering. Right? We're not going to surrender ourselves, and you've still got the supreme leaders. You still have the same president. The IRGC is still intact. Okay. Iran is saying we decide when this ends. Your ceasefire terms are not the real terms. Lebanon is part of this, which Israel says, oh, we're still going to hit Lebanon. That's what another reason why this peace deal is not going to grab any, I mean, it's not going to take hold at all. And the ceasefire is not going to get any traction. And then they double, triple, quadruple down on we're not giving up enrichment rights. So they are opposing everything that Trump has said they're going to do. Now, here's the other thing. Let me take all of this away. And as I mentioned, Trump claims victory right out of the gate. And he says, on Wednesday, a big day for the world, for world peace. Following tonight's announcement, a 2-week ceasefire agreement with Iran, Trump states the United States will assist with the buildup of ships in the Strait of Hormuz and that reconstruction can begin in Iran. The president adds that we are loading up with supplies of all kinds and just hanging around in order to make sure that everything goes well. I feel confident it will, just like we are experiencing in the US. This could be the golden age of the Middle East. All right. Again, it's not going to happen. It hasn't happened. So let's go through what has happened. Right within the ink wasn't even dry on this yet, and a White House spokeswoman says the plan presented by the Iranians was unacceptable and has been abandoned. So the ceasefire is dead on arrival. And then you've got these guys in Tehran basically saying the same thing. The PNSC spokesman says, in response to the aggression against Lebanon, shipping traffic in the Strait must be halted immediately. It never even started. In fact, there was one ship that was headed that direction, and it did 180 right out of the gate. Right. Now, the Iranian deputy parliament speaker, the Strait of Hormuz must be under our control. Sanctions must be lifted, and our losses must be compensated. So everything that we bombed, blew up, destroyed, they expect us to write them a check, cut them a check. Delusional, man. Delusional. Right. The U.S. has over 50,000 troops deployed across the Middle East. The number's continuing to rise. Yes, indeed. I just showed you the flights. Right. Officials say the deployment of thousands of Marines from San Diego to the region are ongoing for now. So they're continuing to stack up. All right. And we'll come back to that. We got a little bit of story stuff to cover on that as well. So, all right, let me take us over and get through the news, and I'm going to show you the rest of this. So, as I mentioned, the U.S. announces a ceasefire with Iran. Pentagon says forces will stay ready. Yeah, they're just maintaining force posture in the region. It's going to kick off again. So, yeah, move on. Questions loom over the Iran ceasefire. Yeah, you think? Look, both sides are claiming a victory, but the peace that is in place now is very delicate and will have to survive tumultuous negotiations. Yes, they will. In fact, the only ones that don't seem to be doing anything right now, quite frankly, is the United States. I don't think we're hitting anything. We're the only ones that are actually not doing. Israel, and I'm going to show you the map here in a second. Israel's lighting it up. They haven't let up. So we'll talk about that here in a second too. Right. Again, this right here, Iran's like, it ain't happening. Okay. U.S. will work with Iran to remove enriched uranium. Charge tolls on the Strait of Hormuz. So Trump is trying to say that U.S. is going to control the money for oil that goes out of the Strait. Listen, I've got two boys. They are absolutely draft age for military. And you know, when you start to see, and I listened to Sean Whalen the other day talk about the fact that his kids, the same thing, they're military age, and they could get sucked right into all of this. And when you talk about the fact that we're over there, they're not even trying to hide it. It's all about the oil. I have a hard time sending my kids to war over this. I'd have a really hard time. And I think most of you probably would as well. Again, typically, nobody says it's about the oil. You go back to Iraq and everything else, but then you look where we stood up shop across, in Iraq and up into Syria, and it's all along the oil fields. That's where we put stakes in the ground. But they never really came out and said it's all about the oil. In fact, Dave Chappelle did a bunch of skits on, imitating Bush and oil and flipping over water and you cooking, all that stuff. It was a joke. Because at the end of the day, it was about oil. And at least here, they're not trying to hide it. We went in, we overthrew a leader in Venezuela. And then what do we say? We're taking the oil right out the gate. Okay. So it's all about the oil. It's all about energy. You control the oil, you control the world. They know that. Okay. But this right here, I do think it's delusional. Iran is not going to let us take any money out of their pocket. In fact, they're asking for us to pay them back. And then you think we're going to be able to, you'll have to send in the SF guys and a team to go get that, because Iran's not going to let you come in and oversee them digging. They won't even let the IAEA do it. because they said, we're not giving up our right to enrich uranium. They've said it from day one. And we're 40 days into the war. They said that at day one of all the way back in the negotiation phase. UAE intercepts. And this is why, look, while we're all saying ceasefire, the U.S. stopped firing shots, UAE intercepts 17 ballistic missiles from Iran, 35 drones after the Iranian ceasefire. Let's continue. UAE Mirage jets suspected in a post-ceasefire strike on Iranian refinery. So, yeah, they take on a barrage, then they send out and they take out an Iranian refinery. Tit for tat. Continuing on. Saudi Arabia's east-west oil pipeline reportedly attacked after the U.S.-Iran ceasefire. This is the one that there is allowing Saudi Arabia to bypass the Strait, and they're producing about 7 million barrels a day coming out of Saudi. And Iran just hit it after the ceasefire. And yet they're telling us that we violated the ceasefire because we're hitting their proxies, not us. Israel is hitting the proxies in Lebanon. Now, take a look. This was the 8th, and you can see all of the strikes, things being hit. Most of this are bridges by the Israelis. You can see all the stuff going on, missile defense popping off. This is the day of the ceasefire, folks. And the map is lit up like a Christmas tree. Then you get to the 9th, and you'll just notice that things are still kind of showing over here. It says here, Pakistani Air Force 78 MP tanker and transport aircraft flew to Saudi Arabia today. It did not land, instead remaining active over the region near Bahrain and the Persian Gulf, likely supporting fighter jets. Whose fighter jets? That's a really big question. Not ours. There's no way we're going to be using some equipment that we don't know about. Whose? That's a bigger question. It wouldn't have been Iran's. So why? Who are they supporting? Theirs? Are they trying to put fighters up over this? Now you start to get into a regional spread. Okay. Now, but let me show you why this is not the traction and the ceasefire will not hold. Because, and I'll show you the article here in just a minute. Okay, but Iran declares a crushing defeat against the U.S. Israel is following Trump's ceasefire announcement. Or sorry, let's try that again. Iran declares crushing defeat against the United States and Israel following Trump's ceasefire announcement. So Iran, again, claiming victory. They won, when the reality is they didn't budge on anything they said they were going to. They basically took the brunt of everything we threw at them, and the regime is still intact. Everything is still there. Only difference is 13,000 sorties took out a whole bunch of stuff. But, you know, it's a big country. They got a lot of people. And so the IRGC still is intact. All of their proxies are still intact. Have they suffered some blows? Yeah, they have. But they're still functional. Okay. Trump warns of major war escalation if Iran peace process fails. Again, it's just more posturing. Do what you say what you mean, finish the job. Stop talking mad smack, because they're not buying it. It's very clear, and I showed you that. They are not buying it. I almost bought it there when I was going through the last sit rep, and I'm thinking, yeah, man, Trump's going to follow through. He's going to do what he said he was going to do. No, he didn't. He waffled. And here we are. We got a ceasefire that nobody's adhering to. And now we continue on. And this, folks, is why the ceasefire will get zero traction, because at the end of the day, Israel are the ones controlling when this fight stops. Why? Because Israel knows they got to finish the job. They're not going to go in there and take small jabs. They're going to go in with everything they got and everything that's within their capability, and they're going to finish the job. And they don't stop until it's finished. That's why since the October 7th stuff, they have been on a warpath, whether you like it or not. All right. And I know there's a lot of folks out there that kind of are not really liking Israel so much right now. But I'm just telling you, these guys, this is why that ceasefire will get zero traction, because Israel will not stop hitting Hezbollah to the north. Why? Because Hezbollah has been and will continue on to try to kill them every chance they get. And not only them, don't forget and lose sight that Hezbollah has roots down in Venezuela. I've shown you the receipts on that, the articles that all tie to the fact that they are down there. They are working with the cartels down there. That's how they make their money. So back to this. This was after the ceasefire. Okay. And you take a look at Lebanon. This is Israel hitting Lebanon. That is today. Okay. Hasn't changed. And you go to the 8th and look at what they did on the 8th after the ceasefire. Israel is not going to let up on any level when it comes to these guys. All right. And that's why ceasefire won't hold, folks. I'm just calling it now. Just going to tell you, because as I said, it will produce zero fruits. This is a waste of our time, and we're taking the bait lock, stock, and barrel. Now, J.D. Vance warns Iranians ahead of the Pakistan talks. U.S. has all the cards, and we want the nuclear fuel. So he's doubling down on, we're coming to take all the stuff so you can't make a bomb. Now, can I just point something out? Who is in control of this again? Because it wasn't Trump that said, "Hey, JD, get over there. Let's get this thing closed out." Wasn't Trump. Guess who it was? Yeah, it's the Iranians. They are actually the ones that said, "We won't talk to anybody but JD Vance." That was their ultimatum 2 weeks ago. And what are we doing right now? We're sending JD Vance over there to talk to him. Not because we decided it, but because they decided it. They are holding all the cards. Strait still isn't open. They haven't folded on anything, folks. Telling you. You may not want to hear that, but I'm just telling you. I'm just calling it like I see it. Okay? Just because we're MAGA doesn't mean we have to deny the truth. All right. Just remember that. You're self-thinkers, folks. You see it for what it is. All right. Don't fall to the strong delusion that's, somebody's telling you things are one way and it's a completely different way, and think, and just buy it for what it is. Ask the questions, stand your ground, hold people accountable, right? You're self-thinkers, you're smart people. Okay. All right. Take a look at this. This again is the Strait. So this is the corridor where they're saying they have to pass through, and they are charging, I think it's $2 million a ship toll, which is higher than the insurance for it to be out here if during a wartime, or around the same amount. So the only people passing through here, which are none. These are ships that are actually sitting up here. They're gonna slowly come through. This one is made to order. It's 1 hour, 36 minutes ago, and it's going the other direction. I don't think it's at 8.5 knots. So it's probably just kind of just slowly trying to figure out the lay of the land. Now, Goldman is saying, hey, look, another month of this closure means over $100 Brent through the rest of the year, which means prices at the pump set by the refineries are going to be elevated. So we're going to be paying for $5 gasoline all the way through 2026 if this goes another 4 weeks. That's what they're saying. Probably more, quite frankly, especially on diesel. Okay, here's where we are currently with Brent. $98 a gallon. It's just hovering right below $100 mark. China weighs the bailout for airlines struggling with fuel shock. So China's already trying to figure out how they're going to compensate the airlines. If it gets to $200 a barrel and like things really escalate and we get into that range, the airlines are going to be shut down. They're not going to fly because they can't make any money. People won't be able to pay for the price that the tickets that they'll need to cover the fuel costs. It'll get stupid crazy, folks. All right. Now, you remember me talking about soy boys, okay? So we were watching all this activity last couple sit reps. I kind of went through and I said, man, there's something going on off the off the coast of England, but I wasn't really sure as to what it was. Well, the defense secretary for the UK reveals that Russian subs had entered their waters and were down there near the cables. And these were the spy subs for Russia. And that they were tracking them. They were hovering around saying, don't do it. Don't do it. And then they said the Russians finally realized they were being watched, and they just basically, they were doing decoys and all kinds of different things, and then they left. But again, the UK, I don't know what has happened over there, folks. And if you're a Brit, God love you. I love the Brits. I have no problem with the Brits, but man, your leadership is about, in the NATO, you folks in other countries, I feel for you, because they have, one, given up your country to immigration, and our leadership almost did it under Biden. But two, man, somebody like if they have any kind of tactical gear, it's a tactical man pouch. Like, they are not, they are eating soy in everyday diet. They have to be, because they are just absolutely just the biggest sissies I've ever seen on the planet. And I'm talking about your leadership. Like, come on. What is going on here, folks? We got to quit being soft. Nobody in the world will ever be held accountable for their actions if you don't start holding your ground and start holding people accountable. And this is exactly the reason why we are, and the world is where it is, because we just dabble. We follow people around and go, don't do it. All right. So here's where we are currently when it comes to the NOTAMs. I don't see anything really new. I do see some danger boxes back out over the Gulf of America. Europe, pretty covered up, a lot of red boxes. And then, of course, Iraq is no longer under the TFR stuff, the NOTAM. Iran still is completely covered up. So, all right, folks. So listen, I have thrown a lot at you, and I probably triggered a few of you, and I apologize if I did. But look, sometimes it's a harsh reality. We got to really, if we're going to have and hold anybody accountable and have any level of accountability, we got to stop drinking from the Kool-Aid, and we got to start being bold and holding people accountable for their actions. And I see none of that happening. I've seen zero arrests. All these people still walking the streets, zero arrests. All the Epstein stuff, man, we've forgotten all about it because we're watching all this war stuff go on and trying to figure out how we're going to pay for gasoline and put food on the table. So they've done a great job at keeping us in a complete just head spin, right? Throwing so much stuff at us it's just that we're losing sight of the true objective. And look, again, the arrest, right? You want to win the midterms? That's what it has to happen. You're going to need to start throwing and holding people accountable. And I don't mean us, the patriots. I'm talking about the people that committed crimes against humanity, the people that have done insider trading, the people that went after Trump and stole the election. Start holding people accountable. Otherwise, the republic is hosed. That, folks, is the reality of where we are. So, all right, listen. May the Lord bless you and keep you and shine his face upon you. All right. Much love. I know I went high and right on a lot of you, but not on you, on the administration and folks. And don't, hold it against me when it comes to me just trying to hold the line when it comes to, like I said, I voted for Trump 3 times, but I am getting sick and tired of the waffling. I want him to just go after the throat and finish the job. All right. So that's it. Keep the powder dry. Stay frosty. We'll talk soon. God bless. Monkey out.